Now, I know what you're thinking. Kay, what are you doing? Well, turns out I was not okay with not having my favorite books of every year recorded, so we are here with the latest favorite books of 2025 on the internet. So yeah, I had made peace with it, and no, I don't have peace with it because I really want to be able to have this record somewhere. So if anyone watches this, thank you so much for appreciating the lateness. Better late than never, as I always say. Kind of a brand on this channel, if you remember some earlier videos. But without further ado, here are my top 10 reads of 2025. And you know everything I'm about to say really qualifies the most favorites because the fact that I still remember these books almost 9 months later is wild. Some of these were read in January last year, so really goes to show. And what's also really interesting is I only own 5 of the 10 books, so I actually had library copies of the rest. So that's kind of a fun little bonus. So coming in at number 10 is part of a series that is deemed romantasy, but I firmly believe this book series is fantasy at its core. And that is book number 2 in the Shards of Magic trilogy, and that is Princess of Blood. Now, this book had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. Just the plotting, the pacing. And I really also can't tell you anything, and I really do believe the title's a spoiler. So I have to keep this one brief. The ending of this book, I am so excited for September. We're continuing on in the story of a girl whose best friend was taken by the Fae, and she is going after her. And she ends up in Fae. She ends up becoming part entangled in a tournament in the previous book. And in this book, we are following the consequence of all that, as well as something that has happened to her that has changed everything in the world of the Fae. And this series is brutal. This book is brutal. And honestly, the way this book ends is the things that are just set up for book 3. It's gonna hurt. I can't wait. Now, I do have book number 9 on this list, and I'm honestly kind of annoyed with myself because I have not gotten to book 2 yet, even though I said I was going to. But that is Never Fall for Your Fiance. I read this book entirely on KU for Rare last year, and it is signed by Virginia Heath. And I actually made her a bookmark of Minerva and Hugh, and you can tell I love this book because I remember their names. That's rare for me. But what I really love about this series that's kind of fun is that the sisters that it's following are all named after Roman goddesses. And this one is Minerva. And as you can tell, Never Fall for Your Fiance, this is fake dating, a fake engagement, because her dad, left her and her sisters broke. She's the eldest. It's up to her to provide her sisters a way to have a life in this society because they are on the brink of poverty. They have lived in poverty for a good portion of their life. And what's also really interesting is that Minerva is a woodcutter. And I don't know, that's just something I've never read about before. But anyway, she enters into a fake engagement with Hugh because his mother is pushing for him to get married. And his mother is across the ocean. She's in America. And he has told her he is in a engagement. He's going to get married. And that causes an issue when his mom is coming across the ocean to see him and said fiance that doesn't exist. Lucky for him, he runs into Minerva, and because he has means, he has a big mansion, so she and her sisters move into this mansion with him for this fake engagement. But it ends up becoming very real with the feelings they catch. And I just remember he had the sweetest romantic gestures. And I remember he took her on this picnic date that just had me giddy. It was the sweetest thing. And just, I loved their relationship so much. And I am going to get to book 2 because the antics that I think it was his friend and her middle sister, the antics they were getting up to already, I am sold. So, need to get to that. Now, for book number 8, I am going to make a video one day saying all my favorite books that are rated extremely low. Because when I last looked it up, this book has a 3.1 average. I don't know what the deal is, especially with thrillers. My favorite 5-star thrillers have the lowest ratings. And that is true for book number 8, which is Close Your Eyes and Count to 10. I don't know what it says about me that I was actually rooting for the antagonist the messy people who are putting on this game show, but I liked their romance that was really like toxic and their push and pull. But in this book, we are following a mom. In this road there is a televised hide and seek game show, and it is run by this dude who has like lots of followers. I don't know what. I'm sure there's a kids YouTuber that does the same thing. But the last time they did the show, someone died, and so there are a lot of people who are out to get this man Maverick running the show. And so he doesn't care. If it doesn't kill you, makes you stronger. Unfortunately, someone was. But he's still gonna keep going with this hide and seek show he's producing. And he's gathering players from across the world. And one of these players is a single mom who's one of her kids watches this man. And she's broke. She needs money. She needs to help support her kids. She ends up getting selected to go on this show. And so she is flown to an island like off the coast of Portugal. And things start going wrong very fast. I listened to this on audio. It was so much fun. I gave this 5 stars. So take that what you will. I just have really unpopular thriller opinions is what I've learned, but I'm okay with it because if I had fun, that's all that matters. And now, I don't know where I talked about this book before. I've definitely mentioned it on my channel because it is written by my queen of fairy tale retellings, Marissa Meyer. And this is probably her least popular writing, although I've heard some mixed opinions on The Escape Room. However, I don't know what it is, what was going through with authors, but D&D has become a very big trend right now in books. But honestly, it's okay because this kind of gave me the same feels as Dungeons and Drama. And if you've stuck around on this channel for any length of time, I have definitely streamed out that book a few times. It was in one of my both the other books in that. Why am I talking about that when I'm talking about this? Anyway, this is the sequel to Instant Karma, and Marissa Meyer has a magical realism twist. So in the first book, Jude's twin sister, Prudence, was able to give bad karma. Jude is having the opposite issue. He is unstoppable. He has good luck. He is a star of statistics and probability unit of his school. And he is also an artist. He is drawing this comic book that's inspired by D&D. And he is also, may or may not be falling in love with his best friend, who is a musician. And, also, what was so cool about the audiobook was the sound effects when it goes into his different sequences. And it would actually give voices, and it had voice acting, and it was just really fun. I really loved this book. And it also just had a bunch of character growth, and it was YA feel goodness that I just really appreciate nowadays. Oh yeah, and I forgot, a whole plot of this book is he is trying to impress this girl that's not Ari. And that is why him starting to look at her differently and starting to fall for her is such a big deal. So yeah, I hope some part of that made sense because I really love this book. I gave it 5 stars. And even though it is not my favorite Marissa Meyer book, I have a really soft spot in my heart for this. Oh, I've never actually opened this book. I listened to this on audio, but it also does give you, like when the audiobook does sound effects, it actually does have the panels in here that Jude is drawing. Coming in at number 6 is a historical romance I was fortunate enough to get an e-arc for, and I gave it 5 stars. Spoiler alert, the second book in this series I also gave 5 stars, and it is absolutely one of my favorites of this year. So, this series is 5 for 5 stars right now. And the first book is To Heist and To Hold, and this book is following a group of widows who are being vigilantes. Say less. It is so fun. I have like a glowing review for this, so a part of me just wants to reread it to you. Also, I don't know why they do this, but they changed the covers of this series. So I don't know if they changed the first one too or not, but the second 2 match and the first one doesn't, and it kind of drives me insane. Okay, let me see. Did they actually change the first book? No, they didn't. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it up because this is so bizarre to me that this is the first book, but these are the next 2 books, and the 2 of these match, but this one doesn't, and it kind of drives me mad. Like, why are we doing that? We are following Ethan and Heloise, and Ethan is running a gambling den. However, it is pretty scandal-free for what it is. But something happens, and he has a lot of past trauma with something that his brother did. And it has shooken him to his core to let anyone else in that he can trust. But someone has started spreading these rumors about his gambling den, and that it is taking advantage of people, and that it is being uncouth. And he is, despite owning it, very straight-laced in terms of his honor. And one of the people who was wronged went to the Widow Society. And this is our group of widows who are vigilantes. And Heloise has decided she is going to go undercover, seduce this man, and get him to admit what he did. What neither of them count on is that they fall for each other. And he falls first and is absolutely whipped for her. His guard is coming down. And it is just so sweet. And then at the same time, her walls, she had a very not good first marriage. Her husband that died was not good to her. So she's also very guarding of her heart against love. And she is not wanting to catch feelings, but she does too. And in this book, she gives him, because for once, the woman is actually groveling, which I kind of appreciated. But she gives him the most emotionally intimate gift she can give him. And also, the other thing I really appreciate, like I said, she's the one that's having the grovel. But it's also one of the most realistic, in-character, tension, angsty third act conflicts I've read about in so long, because it is absolutely necessary for both of them in their growth and for this relationship to actually last and have a foundation. And I really appreciate that Christina Burton went that mile to make it necessary and actually very, very needed for the plot and the relationship in the third act breakup. So honestly, I don't know what it is, but whenever I try to talk about my 5 stars, my 5-star historical romances I've had, I feel like I never do them justice. So I am just gonna kind of bleep my Goodreads review up here because I said it best here. And all I need to tell y'all is go read the, I never say this name right either, the Wimpole Street Widow Society series, because books 1 and 2 were both 5 stars for me. And just top tier historical romance books, top tier romances in general. Okay, this is really funny to me because you know how they say reading influences you in your life habits? Well, this one kind of gave me the strangest influence of all time, and that is wanting to try ube. And I actually went to an ice cream, I was staying at a resort, and they had an ube milkshake, and I actually tried it because I was so curious after how it was talked about in this book that I needed to have it for myself. And that is the design of us, and I need to hunt down her first book. What was so funny to me was, and it's also my goal if I ever can get my book published, I want to be able to reference my own books in other romance books I write. Because in this book, it's actually, the main female character is actually reading the author's first book. And it's never name dropped or anything, but just by the cover design that's described, you know that she's referencing her first book that she wrote, and I absolutely love that for her because 10 out of 10 gold. This is one of the books I read in January, so we're gonna have to actually look. I'm posting it. I'm just putting it right here. Wow, I really dropped page numbers. Okay, so it has actually been over a year since I read this book. So in this book, we have also what I love is that her characters were consent. So we have a baddie in the computer sciences. Oh, that's right. Oh, right. That's Unhinged. Okay, so they are actually coworkers. Kind of grumpy sunshine dynamic. And he just drives her nuts. They had a kind of misunderstanding as their first meeting, and it's just not left a great impression on her. And he's either oblivious or trying to like get it together. Regardless, she's going to Hawaii for her sister's wedding, and she thinks she's finally escaping this man for a week. No, he's at the wedding too. And she walks in and finds him where his ex is just ridiculing him and putting him down. And she, for reasons unknown to her, cannot stand for this. And she walks in there and defends him. And next thing they know, they're in a relationship. She's not backing down and letting him get ridiculed again. So they fake date for the rest of this wedding. And he is so down bad for her. The pages I put up here were for the romantic gestures he did towards her, and just, I read this in January and I still remember some of these scenes. Also, it's not the same as mine, but the anxiety rep that she gave, and the way that she would have to take deep breaths and count backwards. And it was consistent throughout this book without feeling like it was overdone. And I really appreciated that because it made me feel seen, even though anxiety manifests in different ways for everybody. I really did appreciate that representation that felt natural. It didn't feel, you know what I mean? Like sometimes it can feel forced into a book, but this one just felt so natural. And he saw her through that and learned how to like help with it. And just, I really love this book. Also, it was just such a fun time. And not to mention, you will have a craving for ube ice cream by the end of this book. Coming in at number 4. I do not understand why I put reading the sequel off for so long, because this was another 5 stars. This series was just written for me. And I don't know what authors were putting in their 2010 cliffhangers, but oh my gosh, I feel alive when I read these 2010 cliffhangers. 10,000 Skies Above You left off with me actually losing my mind. This was the last book I read of 2025, and the fact that I have not jumped into a million worlds with you, unhinged behavior, because the way this book ended, my jaw was on the floor. I remember how I felt, word for word, what was happening here. Oh my gosh. Now, this series was made for me. It has alternate universes. It has angsty romance. It has a very raw and really just beautifully written, in my opinion, male and female friendship. This book just is so much fun. I pitched this as people who were reading those alternate universe fan fictions, or still are. I see y'all. It's perfect because it is just so much fun. It captures an ability to explore characters in a way that you would not be able to otherwise. Because in this book, we are following a girl whose parents broke the law of dimension travel. They are physicists and have been able to invent the Firebird, which is a device that lets you body jump essentially into alternate universes where your body is at. And you can have a completely different life than what you have now. So you are exploring your life in a different scenario, but also your relationship with other people in a separate scenario. And in this book, there is a catch, though, that we have learned in this book, and that is if you lose the Firebird, you lose your soul. What I mean by that is you lose your memories that tether you to yourself and your actual reality. You become the person you have body jumped into. So your consciousness is now in the belief that the reality you're in is your reality. You forget everything about who you were, or you're fighting to get out of that body, but you can't because you don't have the Firebird connecting you back to reality. And we are following Margaret's love interest, Paul, who has been separated by force from his Firebird device, and his soul has now been scattered across multiple universes. And if they cannot reconnect it, he will never come back in the reality he's from. And I love it so much. I love this book so much. The angst, the tension, the plotting. And like I said, this cliffhanger, absolute jaw dropper. And not to mention, I have said this every video I have ever talked about these books in, the most beautiful covers of all time, I think. So yeah, I feel like that is the most coherent I have been all video. Please go read this book. I have tried to track this book down for ages. As I have talked about extensively on this channel, I love ballet books. They are my bread and butter, especially if there is a element of the ballet that the characters are doing seeping into their actual life. And while this one doesn't do that as in-depth as some of the other books I read, I loved Maya and Natasha. First of all, a moment for the cover. Stunning. My teacher, my classmates in college, they all had Russian-style ballet teachers, and it's brutal. If you really look into the history of the Soviet ballet, and you see it still in ice skating today with the Olympics and with competitions with Russian figure skaters, they are held to a very, very impossible standard. And it really takes a toll on them. And in this book, we are following Soviet-era ballerinas Maya and Natasha. Their mother was also a ballerina, and after having them, things went really downhill. But they were able to get into a Soviet ballet school. And from there, you follow their journey as they are growing up in this environment, what they are to each other, what they're willing to do to achieve their dreams. And if those dreams start evolving, what can happen during the Cold War. But what's also so interesting is that because they are the elite of Soviet society, they are actually able to travel out of the Soviet Union. And we follow how each of these twins' lives takes them a different direction in the field of dance. We also do have one of these twins, I'm not going to say who, but one of them also is able to break out into the movie scene as an actress. And I just loved how it took a different element of the Cold War while also combining artism, and just it made me feel so many things. And I love these kinds of books. They're my bread and butter. And if you have any interest, or if the pitch, Soviet ballerinas and their lives, sounds interesting to you, please go read this. It's a debut, and it is so good. And I love my ballet books, y'all. Okay, you can absolutely tell when I was reading this from the library versus when I had the paperback. That reminds me, Can The Strength of the Few please come out in paperback? Because I refuse to buy the hardback when I have this lovely floppiness. Anyway, who has not screamed about this book yet? And I really hope I still have the footage. If I have it, this is my reaction to finishing the book.
What? What? Okay, wow. So I put off finishing this for like 2 months. I started this in July and then I finished it just now because I just didn't want it to end. And then I proceeded to sit there and just stare at the last page because what? And then I read it again and again. And I finally think I understand what happened. And then I read the summary for the next book and I understand what happened, but just what? I love it. Do I understand it? No, but I love it.
I was flabbergasted. I read that last page, that last section, at least 3 times because I could not wrap my head around it. And everyone and their brother has screamed about this book. But this is also one of my first big epic fantasies that bridges sci-fi as well. And I love this. This is my guy. I just want to describe The Will of the Many because I feel like everyone and their mom has read this book by now and has reviewed it so much better than I ever could. But anyway, I actually prolonged finishing this book for at least 2 months because I was just so enthralled by it and I loved it so much. I loved the exploration of, if you don't know what The Will of the Many is, I'm sorry guys, I cannot explain this book well enough. But all you need to know is he is royalty. And his family was assassinated by the governing body of this world. And he went into hiding. He doesn't want to take down the system, but he also doesn't want to concede to it. So he is kind of just trying to mind his own business. When he is adopted by a higher up in the society who is wanting him to infiltrate a academy to prove that his brother did not die of natural causes. And then Corvus is also approached by a rebel group who want him to double cross his adoptive father. And I just love reading about the different relationships in here. I loved reading about the messy dynamics, but also the heart. And I loved the friendships. One of these tabs, I don't remember which one, I think it was green, it was just friendship moments. And also just exploring what your identity is when you can't embrace your identity, if that makes sense. Please release, whoever is listening and publishing houses, please release The Strength of the Few in paperback so I can finally read it. Thank you. All right, and now, drum roll please. My number 1 favorite book of 2025. I do not care how basic of an answer this is, but it was Sunrise on the Reaping. Now look at those tabs. I'm beyond excited for November's film. I love the cast. I know that they're gonna have to drag me out of that movie theater. And I love Hamish. I actually made a whole journal spread. I loved Hamish before Sunrise on the Reaping. And I devoured this book over spring break last year when I was teaching. And I have heard since that this book felt like fan service to a couple of people. Most people and I shared the same opinion that it was amazing, 10 out of 10. And I loved the commentary on propaganda and what you see in the media, what is recorded, and how it can be twisted. I love how it talked about what you see on TV, or to apply to today's day and age, what you see on social media, what you see in the news can be manipulated to how it wants viewers to react to it. And not to mention, I loved all of the tie-ins for the characters we see in the trilogy and how they were in here. I am not going to spoil anything. I know most people have probably read it, but seeing the cameos throughout here, I was screaming. And then the connections and everything that we see in the original trilogy just being so heartbreakingly started in here. And it's just fascinating. But it was so good. I never cried. I wanted to cry. I felt my heart curved out a few times. And the epilogue broke me. I'm not even going to lie. If we see this epilogue in the movie theaters, I am not leaving that movie theater. I will just be there forever because I cannot handle this. But yeah, Hamish was always one of my favorites, and this book just gave him everything he didn't deserve and more. But it made me love him even more. So, I am so glad this exists. I'm so glad we as a bookish society got to experience it together. And it is my favorite book of 2025. I don't care if it's basic. I don't care if it is predictable. I loved this. So these are the 5 I physically own. I'm still hunting down a couple of my other ones. If you see them or you have them, just send them my way. But these are my favorite books of 2025. Thank you all so much for supporting this video. And even though it came almost a year late, I am very happy I decided to do this and talk about my favorites because it just would not have felt right to not have these books talked about on my channel in depth in a dedicated video. So thank you all so much for watching this video, and if you're interested to stick around my bookish corner of the interweb by subscribing, or just like this video if you liked it. And I hope to see you again. Until next time, I'm Kay. Bye!